Just how many projects does it really take to have a good enough developer project portfolio to get that elusive job offer, but not at a top tech firm? What is the complexity of these projects, and what do they even look like? And most importantly, is the magic number 2, 3, or 5 projects? I will answer all these questions and so much more in this video when I show you what my portfolio looked like before I got my first front-end developer job. If you are curious to read about what the entire process was like for me, I'll put a link to my full story in the description below. Otherwise, let's go.
Okay, so starting at the bottom of my list is my local weather app project. This was one of the first projects that I had built, and I made it using HTML, CSS with Bootstrap, JavaScript, and jQuery. Now, if you couldn't guess by the title, the purpose of this project was to get a user's local weather based upon their geolocation and display it to them on their screen. Now let me jump over to the browser and show you what the actual finished project looked like. I've gone ahead and copied and pasted the URL into the browser here. So now if I just click enter, we are taken to the page, and you'll notice that the browser prompts us that this page wants to know our location, so we need to accept this or allow it in order for the app to work. So I'm going to go ahead and click allow, and what happens here is the weather app takes our location, it sends it through to an API. The API responds back with the weather data, and then this information is populated on the page. Now you'll notice the first thing is the background color changed. So what happens here is based on the actual temperature of where you're located, the background color changes, and this works very similar to how a heat map goes. So the hotter the temperature, the warmer the color. And now here, if we look at the main app, you'll see there's a cloud icon animation going on here. I want to point out that this was taken from Josh Bader's CodePen, so that's that. And then you'll notice here's the temperature, so it's 22 degrees here. There's a little toggle switch here, which lets us switch between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So if I click on it, it's 72 Fahrenheit. If I click back, that's 22 Celsius. And then it just tells us what the weather is in my city and the country. So now that's basically the app. It's pretty simple and straightforward. There's not a whole lot to it. And I want to just go over into the code and point out a few things. Inside of the code, I am just in the HTML file here, and I just want to point out a couple things. So you'll notice that the file itself is not very big, and the body part is what's most important, and it's mostly just markup, so divs, and we just have class names or IDs, and this is all just for otherwise the CSS. The majority of the stuff is with the CSS, which I'm not going to cover here. And here, for example, this is where we'll get the temperature, and that comes from the JavaScript as well as the city and the country. So that's the HTML, so there really is not much to the markup. The CSS file is much bigger, but I'm not going to go through all of that. I do want to just go into the JavaScript, and you'll notice it's a little bit longer, but there's basically 3 functions. So this first one up here, it just converts the temperature from degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. So when you click on the toggle slider, it will convert. So if the value is Celsius, it will convert it to Fahrenheit and vice versa. Now, the function at the very bottom, this is simply getting the date from the user's computer and then adding the little copyright at the bottom in the footer that you saw. So it just says copy the year and then my name, all rights reserved. And of course this here, this function right here is the main one that does, up here, that's the one, is the one that does everything. So it's a iffy immediately invoked function expression. So it will run right away compared to the other ones where they'll run upon the click. And of course I have jQuery in here. I also want to point that out. So this just says if we don't have the geolocation data, then we just display this loading, please wait. If we get some sort of error, we return an error message. When we get the coordinate successfully, all we're doing is getting the latitude and the longitude. We are constructing the URL, which we then make the API request. We get back the data, we extract the temperature, the city, the country, as well as the description, and then we add this information with jQuery into the site. We have here, of course, the image description. So it's just a map. So based on if it's cloudy or sunny, then we just will insert the HTML markup for, say, clouds or snow or rain, whatever, and that will show the correct HTML markup for the icon animation. And the last thing is just for the color. So this is the heat map. So, if we have a temperature more than 30, display this color and so on and so forth. So that's all that is. And then we just set the color. So that is it in terms of the code to get this to work. So again, it's not complex at all. Maybe for a beginner it might be, but that's all. Moving on to the second project on my list is my personal website. Like the previous project, it was also made with the same technologies. Unfortunately, I've remade my website since that time, so I will just show you a live version of it from CodePen. Okay, so this is the live version of my personal professional website. It's a typical portfolio site where I have my information. We have a navigation bar here. So if I were to click on projects, it takes me to the project section. Now let's just scroll back up to the top and you'll notice back at this time, I was very heavily invested in entrepreneurship, so I had as my kind of main jumbotron landing page kind of thing was my business venture at the time, which was called Create Your Tail. So I just had some text for it and allowed people to sign up. So you could click this. I think I disabled actually the sign up on CodePen, but all it did was show a pop-up and you could put your name and email and then you would get registered. So the next section was projects. I did have a much bigger project section, but unfortunately I didn't update the CodePen with it. I think I had maybe 7 or 8, but this just gives you an idea of what it looked like. So it just had a little screen capture of my projects. We could click on this and get a more detailed description of the project, and then we provide links, otherwise whatever, to YouTube, to CodePen, or the live version of it. I also had some services, so same thing for web design, salary negotiation, startup tips, and you could expand this and it would just provide you with more information. And the last thing was I just had a about section. I'm pretty sure I had changed this color, just so you know. Do something that actually looks like red. And this just kind of described me and a few things about me. And there was a contact section with a form, so you could fill in your information and send me a message. And then, of course, we have our social media profile links to um, where you can find me online. And of course, this site is so fully responsive here. So as you can see, we have um, this is what it looks like in the mobile version. So we have the mobile drop down menu. And if I scroll down, this just stacks vertically. Same with this, and as well as with my about section. And the contact form also gets cleaned up, so it's fully responsive. You'll notice, right, if I start zooming out, we get that fully comes out. This already goes to what it looks like on the desktop, and the menu is already the same as on the desktop, the full version. So that's my portfolio website in a nutshell. I'm not going to go through the code because there's a little bit more to it than that, and otherwise this video would take too long. The third project from the bottom of my list is still one of my favorite projects that I've done. It was building a game of Tic Tac Toe, the classical game. And I made this using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React. So around this time is when I picked up and learned a framework. So let me show you what this project looks like live. Alright, so I have the URL to my Tic Tac Toe game here in the address bar. I'm just going to go ahead and press enter. We are taken to the game, and the first thing that you see is a pop-up here which prompts us to select a side. We can otherwise choose O or X, but I'm going to go ahead with X. And this is the game board. You'll see that we are the player. This is 1 versus 1, and we are playing against the computer. Just for your information, I programmed the computer to be unbeatable, so it's using the minimax algorithm, and you literally cannot win. So if I start playing the game here, you'll notice that the computer makes smart moves, so no matter what I do or try, it doesn't seem to matter. The best I can do is draw, and let's say I play poorly and do something stupid, you'll notice that the computer will beat me because it's designed to do that. So if we try again, okay, so that's the game. The last thing that I want to point out is that there is a small bug in this game, so it's not perfect. You can actually beat the computer if you cheat a bit. And the way this works is if you click on 2 or 3 different squares really quickly, you can essentially have more than one selected. So if I click on, sorry, yeah. So I clicked on 2 squares really quickly and it let me win. So I'm going to try and reproduce that again. So you'll see that I have 2 squares now. If I say click on that, and there we go, I won. So that is a bug, obviously not intended, and I never went and fixed it, but it just shows you that you don't have to have everything completely polished and perfect. That something like this that's good enough or it works, maybe there's, you're right, a bug or a quirk, is okay, and it's enough to get you a job. Okay, so moving on to the fourth. Wait, what? Fourth? But don't good things come in threes? Well, not in programming. So the fourth project on my portfolio was a facial recognition web app. The way it worked was that you could upload an image with a person's face and a box would be drawn around their face. It was a cool little project, but it was actually a guided one from an online course I took from zero to mastery. I still decided to include it in my portfolio because it was a full stack project. At the time I was only applying for front end jobs, but I wanted to show that I had learned the basics around the back end with this project. I built the project with the following technologies: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Node, Express, and PostgreSQL. Alright, let's see what it looks like live. Okay, so I've gone ahead and loaded up the web app just so that you don't have to wait, because I do have this deployed on Heroku. So if it hasn't been in use, it takes 30 seconds for it to boot up because I am on the free tier. So this is the web app, and you'll see we just have a sign-in screen, and then we also have a navigation where we can go to register or sign in. Since I don't remember any sign-in credentials of previous users, I'm just gonna go and create a new one. So let's call this David, and we will say David at me.co, and we'll just put in a password. Now I will click register. It might take a little bit. We'll just ignore this and ignore that. So, and this is the apps inside. You'll see we have the user's name. We do keep track of how many images that you upload, and this is just a little thing. So I already have a link to an image copied, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in here. And now I'm going to click detect. So you'll notice that the image shows up, which is just a picture of me from my website. You'll also notice that the box gets drawn around my face, and you also see that the image count gets increased by 1. So we can also, now we could go back and say sign out. Now we can go to the sign in form. If I remember correctly, and just put in our credentials. We sign in. We are back. We just have to ignore that, and you'll see that our number 1 stays the same. Let's upload the same image. See what happens. Okay, we get my face detected again, and the count increases to 2. So that's the app. It's pretty simple in terms of the scope, but again, it saves the data to a database, and that's why it is a full stack app. Moving on to the fifth and last project in my portfolio, if you had guessed that the magic number was 5, you would have been 100% correct. So give yourself a pat on the back. I had named this project the Most Polluted Cities. The reason why is that it is a web app that lets you select one of 4 countries, and it will return the 10 most polluted cities in that country. I built this project with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React. Now, let me show you what it looks like live. Alright, so I have the URL here, and I'm just going to press enter, and we get taken to my Most Polluted Cities app. So this project, I spent a fair bit of time working on the design or the graphics. So you'll see that the background is pretty interesting, and I quite like it. So at the very bottom, you see the green here is meant to be grass. We have a little cow here. We have some skyscrapers, and there is also some industrial buildings that are polluting. You'll see that the sky is blue, and then as we go up higher and higher, it gets darker and darker, meant to signify the pollution. And then, of course, we have this guy wearing a mask, which ironically is kind of funny for compared to now with the whole coronavirus. And yes, so the way this works is we select a country. However, this was only designed to work for specific countries, and we get back a list of the 10 most polluted cities. So if I click on here, you'll see that these are the 4 countries that get a response back, and I've previously put in a country that's not valid. So if I select Canada again, and I type find cities, it'll tell me that it's not a valid country from the list. Now I do want to point out that there is a small bug here that if I click on this, it just clears the input, but it doesn't open up the drop down again. I have to click on it again and then the drop down opens. So something minor, but I do just want to point out that there is a little bug in here. So if I select a country, let's say France, and I can also type and it will filter it. And I click find cities. We come back and we get this little ranking. So we get cities from France, ranking of 1 to 10, and we get this pollution index. So this pollution index is based off the air quality index calculation. It's a Canadian one, and it just gives a number from 1 to 10. And I think it was like 1 to 3 is low, 4 to 6 is moderate, and 7 to 10 is high. So that just gives you a nice, easy visual number representation of what the pollution index is. So at the moment, you'll see that there's a few cities in France that have 5, and then there's some with 4, and then there's one here with 3. I'm not even going to bother pronouncing the names because there's no way I can pronounce it. And let's try another one. So let's try Germany. So yeah, I designed this at least to work with fresh data. So if the data isn't fresh, as in there's nothing in the past 3 hours, I set it up so that this error message pops up. And the reason for doing that is just because the air quality index calculations were meant to be, I think, the data needed to be within 3 hours, otherwise the calculation wasn't accurate. So I wanted to try and stick to do the calculations as best as I could to that formula. There, I did simplify it a bit, but yeah, I found this was kind of a okay approach. And then let's try another one, Poland. And we'll see here that there's a little bit maybe worse than France. So we have a couple 6s, and then we have a bunch of cities with 5, and yeah, that's none with 4. So pollution is a little bit higher in Poland. And if I try Spain, again, same thing. So there's just no fresh data for Spain. Yeah, and that's basically the app. It just, you put in your location, it queries it, queries it to the API, get the data back, and then if there is information within or data within the past 3 hours, we take it, and then we do the calculations and you populate the table. Otherwise, we just get this error message. Now, I have one more surprise for you guys. It's a bonus project, and I also want to show it to you. I had made this one right before I got a job offer. Yes, I know it wasn't on my portfolio, but this was just because I hadn't updated my portfolio to include it yet. And I was already using the project in job applications, so I thought I would also show you this project. It is my Star Wars plot generator app. This is an app where you can select a character and a planet, and a randomly generated episode gets created. I really liked how this project turned out, and it's one of my favorites. This is now what it looks like, and you can see that it has an interesting background, which was all generated with CSS. So you'll see that there's a blue colored sphere here, and it has blue light emitting from it. You can guess that we are in space or outer space. There is probably a moon, and this would be a star. And on the inside, we have our Star Wars plot generator. So there is the first step, which tells us or asks us to choose a resource type. So we have the option of character or planet. So let's go with character first. And then we have two options. We can otherwise search for a resource ourselves or generate random. So let's generate random, and you'll see that automatically we get some character. We can click the refresh, we get another one, another one. Okay, let's add this one to the plot. Now if I try adding it again, you'll see that we get a no duplicate entries allowed pop up. So let's go back. Okay, maybe we don't want that, so we can go back and let's search for a character ourselves. And we say, okay, yes, we want Luke Skywalker. Let's add him to the plot. And now I want to instead change the planets. Let's see. Maybe we'll add this one. Let's add generate random. Let's add this one to the plot. And this one, and let's say this one. And if I now try and add, say, another one, you'll also notice that we only allow maximum of 3 characters in the plot. Now, just to make the story not so long, let's just delete these one, and let's also get rid of Luke Skywalker. So let's just have Chewbacca and Bestine the Fourth, and we click on generate the plot. So this is the plot title, Chewbacca and their broken history. How broken can someone be? What goes into creating such a life like that? Well, this is the story of Chewbacca. Born on a universe in Bestine the Fourth, they have had a difficult life right from the beginning. This episode will take you through it, including the story of their sword collection, featuring Chewbacca and Bestine the Fourth. So that sounds pretty exciting, interesting episode. And yeah, so once you generate the plot, you click the close button and everything is reset, and you can go and generate another plot.
Okay, so there you have it. Those were the projects that got me my first front-end developer job at a normal company. So in other words, not at a top tech firm. Hopefully from watching this video, you've realized that the projects do not need to be completely perfect. It's okay to have 1 or even 2 bugs in them, but they do need to make a really good impression, especially your best ones. Hopefully, you also didn't think that the projects were overly complex, and your belief in getting that first developer job yourself has increased. If you have any questions about the process, journey, or my projects, feel free to reach out to me. You can find my contact information on my website. I will also put links to all the projects and the source code in the description below. And if you are still here with me, thank you so much for watching. I would really appreciate if you left me a comment and let me know what you thought about this video, whether you were surprised by the projects, which one you liked the most, if anything shocked you, whether the projects were too simple or too complex, anything. If you also found this video useful or helpful to you in any way, shape, or form, I would really appreciate if you also hit that like button. I'm even smiling for you guys. Come on. I know you want to hit that like button. Lastly, I'm starting a series called Entrepreneurial Dreams. My challenge to building a SaaS business in 12 months. I'll be documenting the entire process of building an online business completely from scratch, right from the idea phase to the finished product. If you want to know when the first video comes out, I would highly suggest that you subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.